Hey everyone, today I want to talk to you about a project I've been working on to transfer data from a non-network computer into a user's smartphone or smart device using QR codes. Now, QR codes are quite common. You're seeing them all over the place from you go to a restaurant, you scan that to get the menu, or some, you want a lot of retailers want to take you to a particular product or whatever. Usually, the QR code simply points to your URL. However, the QR code has the ability to hold quite a bit more data than your typical barcode could. So I believe it's up to somewhere around 1,000 to 2,000 characters. So that it's for most, that's quite a bit of data from what we wanted. Okay, so here's my use case. I run a Chem 2 lab, and there are computers with particular instruments hooked up to them. Now the whole lab is built around the students use their instrument, collect data, and then they have to analyze that data at some point. Now, 5-10 years ago, most students carried a thumb drive around. So for them to get the data off the particular computer was never an issue. Just pop their thumb drive in, transfer the data, and we're good. Most students coming into the class nowadays, they don't have a thumb drive, and many of them don't really even know what a thumb drive is, because thumb drives were introduced in the early 2000s, and most of my students are somewhere between 18 and 20 years old. So a bit of a generational gap here. And I was asking myself, well, how to get the students to transfer the data? And because again, the computers are not networked. However, almost all students nowadays are going to carry their cell phone around, and we know that cell phones could easily read QR codes. So I started to think, is there a way to make use of that? And my first thought was, all right, I'm going to write this desktop program to install it on the computer and generate the QR code and all that. That turned out to be not ideal, because again, these computers are locked down, so you can rarely install any desktop software on there, even if I could write it. And I really didn't want to take the time or the effort to write a full-blown desktop application to do that. The next approach I looked at was using a simple web app that's built using HTML and JavaScript, and luckily with some nice libraries for generating and both reading QR codes, and obviously the use of those current language models to actually write most of the code. I was able to do that with very little effort, and that's what I want to demonstrate to you today. So how does this work? Typically, the data, and it looks like it's CSV data almost always, so you end up in a table format, and that data gets has to be ready. Now, it's important to note that it's not a lot of data. Most of the time, it's less than 1 kilobyte of data, so very little data. But to transfer it manually by copying it, copy the numbers into like a notebook or something like that, not the easiest of tasks, and that's obviously very error prone. First and foremost, we install a basic web page, which is this, onto the PC in the lab. Now this is because it's just a web page with some JavaScript files. There's no special requirements required. Now, first and foremost, because it's just a web page, HTML page with JavaScript in there, you don't need any special permission to install this thing. You just drag it to the desktop. It's all self-contained. It doesn't require any network connection to work. So you're presented with this screen, and now we have to copy your data, paste the data in, and you say generate QR code. But before you do that, there is a QR code already there, and that takes you to the decoding app. So the user would simply use their smartphone, scan that QR code, it takes them to the data scanner app, and now you say generate. So this program does not only generates the code, but it has to split it up. And the way it splits up, it's split up by line, because most of the data is CSV data. Hence, it just says, okay, by default, it does I believe every 10 lines. So in this case, we had about 70 lines of data, and it generates a series of QR codes. But that raises another question. number one, because the user could just scan any one of these QR codes at any time. And number two, how do you get them to do it in order? And to solve that problem wasn't too difficult. In addition to splitting the data and generating the QR codes for the data, it also embeds a number in it. So this will be number one, number two, number three. And now when you go to scan it with the data scanner app, the data scanner app keeps track of which QR code was scanned and which is the next one. So if you scan this one and you try to scan QR code number 3, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't scan it. It would tell you, I'm waiting for QR code number 2. So that's issue number 1. Issue number 2 is that you don't want to rescan these QR codes over and over. So it does that as well. Once you scan it once and it has the data that's in there, it's not going to scan it again. So it makes it pretty easy to go through, scan roughly all these QR codes, and then it assembles the data into again, CSV or TSV file. The other issue we ran into is that you may notice that there's a lot of decimal places here, and for what the students have to do is basic plotting and maybe do trend lines in there. You don't need that precision. So that's where app number 2 comes into place. This is a data reducer. So it would take that data and it says, okay, reduce the number of rows to average. So it's going to just average over these 2 rows, and also says how many decimal places I want to round to. So that's gonna, let's do this as 3, and I would say average that, and then I get a much reduced data set. And again, smaller the data set, remember, the easier that's going to be to generate a QR code from it. So again, we copy that to the clipboard, and if we go ahead and regenerate this data, we end up with less QR codes, but for most part the information that's transferred is the same. And all right, so that's it for today. Take a look at the GitHub repo, which has this code. And again, most of this code, almost all of it, was written by the large language models. So which was, I believe I used Copilot and VS Code, Gemini, and of course ChatGPT. If it weren't for those things, it would just take me too long and would have been too involved to even consider doing this. But using very basic HTML, JavaScript, large language models, it was quickly able to put something together that allows easy data transfer between the user's non-network PC and the user's smartphone